The alarm bell rang through the camp 3 times, sharp and loud. Commander Park Jin-ho heard it from inside the main control room, and his stomach became tight. He knew what that sound meant. Something bad was happening. Park Jin-ho walked fast out of the control room and into the cold morning air of Kepler 442b. The sky above was a light purple color, different from Earth's blue. 2 small moons were still visible even though the sun was coming up. Everything around him looked strange and empty. The camp had only 12 people, and they were the first humans to ever live on this planet. The main generator room was smoking. Park Jin-ho could see thick gray smoke coming from the metal building near the edge of the camp. Engineer Lee Tae-oh was already there, his face covered in black dirt and oil. His hands were shaking a little as he worked to turn off the machines. "The backup generator just failed," Lee Tae-oh said without looking at Park Jin-ho. His voice was tired and sad. "We're completely out of fuel now." Park Jin-ho felt something heavy drop inside his chest. He had known this moment was coming, but knowing and actually facing it were 2 very different things. They had been on Kepler 442b for 17 days. The power situation had been bad for weeks, but now it was impossible. "How long until the supply ship arrives?" Park Jin-ho asked, even though he already knew the answer. 28 days, Lee Tae-oh said. He finally looked at Park Jin-ho, and the fear in his eyes was clear. "Maybe 30 if there are any problems." Park Jin-ho nodded slowly. 28 days was a long time. Without fuel, the main power systems would fail. Without power, everything would stop. The machines that kept the air clean would stop working. The machines that kept the food cold would stop working. The communication systems that connected them to Earth would go silent. They would be alone in the dark, far from home, with nothing to help them survive. Park Jin-ho walked through the camp and called a meeting. One by one, the team members came to the central tent. He saw their faces, and they all looked worried. They knew what this meant, too. Botanist Kim Hae-won came first, her hair tied back tightly and her scientific tools still in her hands. She had been outside the camp, collecting plant samples. Then came Medic Park Sun-jae, who looked calm but tired. Next was Engineer Choi Min-jun, who walked in and immediately said, "We're going to die, aren't we?" No one answered him. Han Ji-woo, the careful researcher, took a seat in the back. Kang Un-soo, the technology expert, came in holding a cup of water. Yoon Mi-kyung, the microbiologist, arrived last, wondering why everyone looked so serious. Park Jin-ho stood in front of them all. He was tall and strong, with gray starting to show in his hair. He had led teams on Earth before, in difficult places and difficult times. But he had never faced anything like this. "The generators have failed," he said simply. "We have no fuel left. The supply ship will not arrive for almost a month." The room became very quiet. The only sound was the wind outside the tent, making the fabric move slowly back and forth. Choi Min-jun put his head in his hands. "How long can we survive?" he asked. "That depends," Park Jin-ho said. "We have emergency power cells, but they are very small. They can run the life support systems for maybe 2 weeks if we use almost no power for anything else. After that," he did not finish the sentence. No one needed him to finish it. Kim Hae-won suddenly stood up. "Wait," she said. "Look outside. Look at all the plants, all the green things growing everywhere. This planet is alive with plants and trees. There must be something we can use." Everyone looked at her. Some people had hope in their eyes again, but others still looked afraid. "Plants cannot power a generator," Choi Min-jun said. His voice was angry and sad at the same time. But Park Jin-ho was looking at Kim Hae-won. An idea was forming in his mind. A small idea, like a tiny light in the dark. He had studied chemistry in university before he became a commander. He had learned about many things, including how to make fuel from plants. "Can plants be turned into fuel?" Park Jin-ho asked Kim Hae-won. "On Earth, yes," she said. "We make biofuel from plants all the time. But these plants are not from Earth. I do not know what they contain. I would need time to study them." "We have no time," Choi Min-jun said. "We have exactly the time we need," Park Jin-ho said quietly. He was thinking now, really thinking. "We have fuel for 2 weeks. If we use it very carefully, if we make it last, we can give ourselves time to try something." Lee Tae-oh shook his head. "Sir, with respect, making fuel from unknown plants is impossible. We do not have the right equipment. We do not have scientists trained for this. We have people," Park Jin-ho interrupted. "We have 12 intelligent people with knowledge and skills. We have tools and machines and things we can take apart and rebuild. We have a whole planet full of plants, and we have no other choice." He looked at each person in the room. "I am not going to sit in the dark and wait to die. That is not who we are. Humans are problem solvers. We are survivors. When things are impossible, we find ways to make them possible." Park Sun-jae, the medic, smiled a little. "He is right," he said. "My grandmother told me stories about people surviving in impossible situations. Humans are stubborn like that." "So you are asking us to try to make fuel," Kim Hae-won said. It was not really a question. "I am asking you to help me try," Park Jin-ho said. "I am asking all of you to help me. Each person will have a job. We will work together, and we will figure this out." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Han Ji-woo stood up. "I will help," she said. "I can assist with research." Kang Eun-soo nodded. "I can help organize the data and equipment." One by one, the others agreed. Even Choi Min-jun, though his face still looked doubtful, said yes. Lee Tae-oh was the last. He looked at Park Jin-ho for a long time. Then he said, "If we are going to do this crazy thing, we must do it right. We must do it smart, no mistakes." "Agreed," Park Jin-ho said. That night, as the purple sky turned dark and the stars came out, so many more stars than on Earth, the team began to prepare. They did not rest. They did not sleep. They worked and planned and organized everything they would need. Park Jin-ho stood outside the tent looking up at the stars. Somewhere far away past those stars was Earth. It was hard to imagine that people there were sleeping in beds and eating warm food and not worried about dying. But here, on Kepler 442b, under a strange purple sky, the people of his team were going to fight to survive. They were going to do the impossible thing. And Park Jin-ho believed, truly believed, that humans were the kind of creatures who could do impossible things. He took a deep breath of the alien air and went back inside to work. The sun rose on the second day of their desperate plan. It was smaller than Earth's sun and burned with an orange-yellow color that made the world look like it was on fire. Kim Hae-won was already outside, walking through the thick plant life that surrounded the camp, collecting samples in plastic containers. She moved carefully through the forest-like area near the camp boundary. The plants on Kepler 442b were strange and beautiful. Some had leaves that were not quite green, but a blue-green color. Others had thick stems that felt almost like rubber. The air smelled different, too, with earthy scents and sweet floral notes that did not exist anywhere on Earth. Han Ji-woo followed her, carrying bags and writing notes about every plant they found. Han Ji-woo was very organized and very careful. She had worked in laboratories her whole life, and she knew the importance of exact information and clear records. "This one," Kim Hae-won said, pointing to a plant with thick bulbous roots. "Look at how the stem is shiny, see? It could mean oil content. High oil content is what we need for fuel." She pulled the plant carefully from the ground. The roots were full of thick white liquid that dripped slowly. She squeezed a small piece of the root, and more liquid came out. "What do you think it is?" Han Ji-woo asked, writing everything down. I think it might be something like what we call oil, Kim Hae-won said. On Earth, we use oils from plants like soybeans and canola to make biofuel. This could be similar, but I need to test it. We need to see if it actually burns. They collected more samples, different plants, different parts of plants. Leaves, stems, roots, seed pods that looked like nothing Kim Hae-won had ever seen. By the time the sun was at the middle of the sky, they had filled 7 large bags with plant material. Back at the camp, Park Jin-ho and Lee Tae-oh were building something unusual. They had taken apart old equipment and pieces of metal from the camp's storage. They used heating elements from the broken life support system and containers from the medical supplies. They created a kind of cooking system made from pipes and containers. This is crazy, Choi Min-jun said, watching them work. He was supposed to be helping, but mainly, he just watched and worried. This is not a real laboratory. This is like something a child would make. That is exactly right, Lee Tae-oh said, wiping sweat from his forehead. We do not have a real laboratory. We have this. We have what we can make, and we will make it work. Lee Tae-oh was a practical engineer. He had fixed machines and built structures all his life. He did not believe in giving up, and he did not believe in excuses. If something needed to happen, he found a way to make it happen. Right now, he needed to make a fuel-making machine from pieces of metal and old equipment, and he was going to do exactly that. Kang Eun-soo worked with him, handling the delicate connections and using computer equipment to help design the system. She was young and intelligent, able to understand both the technical side and the practical side of the problem. Together, they created a rough but functional distillation system. When Kim Hae-won and Han Ji-woo returned with the plant samples, everyone gathered to see what they had brought. Kim Hae-won set the samples on a metal table. We have material from 17 different plant types, she said. We will test each one to see which ones are best for fuel production. How long will that take? Park Sun-jae asked from where he sat nearby. As the medic, he was thinking about how tired people were getting and how they needed to manage their energy and rest. Days, Kim Hae-won said honestly. Maybe a week before we know for certain. We do not have a week, Choi Min-jun said immediately. We have maybe 2 weeks of power, and that is if we use nothing. Everything uses power. Lights, communication, everything. Park Jin-ho raised his hand. Then we will use nothing we do not absolutely need, he said firmly. Lee Tae-oh, what do we need power for? Lee Tae-oh made a list. Life support for air and water processing, food preservation, the emergency communication system. That is all we need. Everything else stops. It was decided. For the next 2 weeks, the camp would run on minimum power. No artificial lights except for the laboratory area, no heating except what was necessary. No entertainment systems, no comfort, only survival. That night, in near darkness, Kim Hae-won began her tests. She worked with materials in the laboratory area, testing each plant sample. She was looking for oil content, for the ability to burn with heat, for the right chemical composition. The work was difficult and needed complete attention. She took a small piece of the root they had collected and put it in a container. Using a heating element, she applied careful heat to it. The sample warmed, then started to warm more. Suddenly, liquid began to drip from the sample. She caught it in a clean container. It was oil. Not exactly like earth oils, but similar enough. When she held it near the small test flame, it warmed and created smoke. The smoke caught fire. It burns, she said quietly to Han Ji-woo, who was watching nearby. This one burns. Over the following days, Kim Hae-won tested all 17 samples. 6 of them produced oils that could burn. 2 of those oils burned very cleanly with steady flames. The best one came from a plant with blue leaves and a thick, creamy root system. She brought her results to Park Jin-ho and Lee Tae-oh. "The blue leaf plant," she said. "That is our best source. It produces the most stable oil. It burns clean. And there are many of these plants around the camp." Lee Tae-oh looked at the chemical composition data that Kang Yoon-soo had helped Kim Hae-won compile. "This is good," he said finally. "This is actually good. If we process this correctly, this could work." Park Jin-ho smiled. It was the first real smile anyone had seen on his face since the generators failed. "Then we move to the next stage," he said. "We make larger amounts. We test the equipment with real production." The team moved their makeshift equipment to a larger area outside the camp. They harvested blue leaf plants, working in teams to gather enough material. The plants were not hard to find or collect. Within one day, they had gathered enough material to fill several large containers. The distillation process began carefully. Lee Tae-oh supervised every step, watching temperatures and managing the heating elements. Kang Yoon-soo watched the numbers on the computer, making sure everything stayed safe and controlled. Han Ji-woo and Kim Hae-won processed the raw plant material, preparing it for the distillation system. The first test batch took 12 hours to complete. At the end, they had produced a small container of biofuel. It was not much, maybe enough to power the generator for 1 hour, but it was real fuel made from alien plants. Lee Tae-oh took the container slowly to the backup generator. The generator had not run since the main fuel ran out. He put the biofuel into the fuel tank with careful hands. Everyone watched. Park Sun-jae held his breath. Choi Min-jun had his hands together like he was praying. Lee Tae-oh pressed the start button. The generator made a sound, a sputtering, rough sound at first. Then the sound became smoother and more regular. The engine was running. Small lights on the generator panel lit up, green and steady. It was working. For the first time in days, someone cheered. It was Kang Yoon-soo who made the first sound, a short, happy cry. Then Park Sun-jae laughed out loud. Even Choi Min-jun's face showed something like hope again. But Park Jin-ho put up his hand. "This was just a test," he said, though his voice carried hope too. "We made enough fuel for 1 hour. We need enough for weeks. We need to understand this process better. We need to make much more." "Then we get to work," Lee Tae-oh said, and he was already thinking about how to make the process faster and more efficient. The team worked through the night and into the next day. More plants were harvested. The equipment ran continuously. Shift by shift, they produced more biofuel. The container of fuel grew larger, then larger still. What had seemed impossible 5 days ago was becoming real. Not easy, not finished, but real and possible. They had found a way to make fuel on an alien world, and they had proved it could work. Now they just had to do it fast enough to survive. The 5th day of work brought the breakthrough. The team was exhausted. They had worked almost without sleeping, taking only short breaks to eat food that was not very good and to drink water. Everyone's eyes were tired and red. Their hands were dirty with plant oils and dust from the alien soil, but they kept working because they had to keep working. Park Jin-ho sat by the distillation equipment, watching the numbers on the computer screen. The system was running a large batch now, nearly 5 times bigger than the first successful test. Lee Tae-oh and Kang Yoon-soo had improved the equipment, making it work faster and better. The pipes carried hot liquid through the system, and liquid fuel dripped slowly into the collection container. Kim Hae-won walked over and sat next to him. She looked as tired as he felt, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "The fuel composition is stable," she said. "Every batch we test has the same purity. That means the process is working correctly and consistently. We can scale it up." Park Jin-ho nodded slowly. "How much do we have now?" he asked. "Enough to run the main generator for approximately 2 days of normal power usage," Kim Hae-won said. "If we continue at the current rate, we can have enough for a week of power in 3 more days." 3 more days. Park Jin-ho did the math in his head. They had used 5 days already. They had maybe 9 or 10 days of emergency power left. If they could make the biofuel production schedule work, they could survive until the supply ship arrived. It was still close, still very dangerous, but it was possible. Lee Teo came out of the processing area, covered in sweat and plant residue. He was making repairs to one of the distillation tubes that had developed a small leak. "The equipment is holding up better than I expected," he said, wiping his face with the back of his hand. "The materials from the camp are not ideal, but they are working. I can keep this system running for weeks if we are careful." "Weeks?" Park Jin-ho asked. "Why would we need it for weeks?" "Because even after the supply ship comes, we might want to keep making biofuel," Lee Teo said. "Think about it, sir. We have discovered a completely new fuel source. Once we get back to Earth and tell them what we have done, every colony in space will want to know how to do this. We have something important here." Park Jin-ho had not thought that far ahead. He had been focused only on survival, but Lee Teo was right. This was not just about surviving the next month. This was something bigger. Inside the camp, in the small medical tent that Park Sun-jae used as a clinic, Choi Min-jun was receiving treatment for exhaustion. He had pushed himself too hard in the first days, working without proper rest, and his body had finally given out. Park Sun-jae had ordered him to rest for at least a full day before returning to work. Choi Min-jun was lying on a medical bed, looking out at the purple sky through the tent opening. He felt guilty for not working, but his body would not obey his mind anymore. He was too tired to move. Park Sun-jae gave him water and checked his vital signs. "Your body is strong," the medic said in his quiet way, "but your mind pushed it too hard. You need to remember that keeping the team healthy is also important work. If people collapse from exhaustion, the whole operation fails." "I was wrong at first," Choi Min-jun said quietly. "When Commander Park proposed this plan, I thought it was impossible. I thought we were going to die." "And now?" Park Sun-jae asked. "Now I see that he was right," Choi Min-jun said. "Humans can do extraordinary things when they are forced to. We are capable of more than we know." That evening, with the large batch of biofuel nearing completion, Park Jin-ho called a small meeting, just the core team this time. Lee Tae-oh, Kim Hae-won, Han Ji-woo, Kang Yoon-soo, and Park Sun-jae. They sat in the main tent, and for the first time in days, they allowed themselves to feel something like hope. "The fuel production is working," Park Jin-ho said. "Lee Tae-oh, how much longer until the equipment is optimized?" "1 more day," Lee Tae-oh said. "Tomorrow I can make improvements that will increase the output by 40%. Maybe more if the equipment holds up." "And the fuel itself?" Park Jin-ho looked at Kim Hae-won. "Perfect," she said simply. "The Blue Leaf plant is an excellent source. It has more oil content than I initially estimated. I think we could produce enough fuel daily to run the generator on a sustainable schedule." Han Ji-woo added her notes. "We have mapped and cataloged all the useful plant species within 2 kilometers of the camp. We have more than enough raw material for any fuel production we need for the foreseeable future." Kang Yoon-soo tapped on her computer screen. "The electrical system is holding. We have power enough for maybe 8 more days on emergency supplies. If the biofuel production schedule stays on track, we will never actually run out of power." Park Jin-ho felt something release in his chest, something tight and painful that had been there since he heard the generators fail. They were going to make it. Against all odds, against all the impossible things stacked against them, they were going to survive. "Then tomorrow we work to improve efficiency," he said. "And the day after that, we work the same way. We do not rest. We do not slow down. We keep moving forward until the supply ship arrives." The next day began before dawn. The orange-yellow sun was just starting to lighten the purple sky when Lee Tae-oh began his improvements. He had designed a better system for heating the plant material. Instead of using the heating elements one at a time, he created a connection that could heat multiple containers simultaneously. It was clever engineering using materials that were never meant to work this way, but in his hands, they worked. By noon, the new system was complete and running. The fuel production immediately jumped higher. They were producing more fuel in 1 hour than they had produced in 6 hours the day before. Kang Yun-soo confirmed the numbers on her computer twice to make sure she was reading them correctly. "This is incredible," she said. "The efficiency has increased more than expected. This is very good." When the first large container of fuel was ready, Lee Tae-oh personally carried it to the main generator. This time, everyone gathered to watch. Park Sun-jae and Choi Min-jun, who was recovering but moved slowly, came out of the medical tent. Han Ji-woo and Kang Yun-soo stood together, holding hands without really thinking about it, both nervous and excited. Lee Tae-oh filled the generator's fuel tank with careful precision. Then he pressed the start button. The generator rumbled to life. But this time it was not just running. It was strong. It was steady. The engine sound was healthy and regular. The power meter showed that the generator was producing full electrical power. The lights of the camp flickered once, twice, then came on strong and bright. Not the emergency lights, which were dim and weak, but the real lights, the full-strength lights that made everything visible and clear. Park Jin-ho looked around at his team. Everyone's face was lit by the real electric light for the first time in days. Faces that had been worried and tired suddenly showed something different. Relief, pride, hope. "The biofuel is working," Park Jin-ho said to all of them. "Not just surviving, but truly working. We have accomplished something that many people thought impossible." "What happens now?" Han Ji-woo asked. "Now," Park Jin-ho said, looking at each person, "we have done the hard part. We have solved the problem. What comes next is making sure the process continues smoothly until help arrives. We will establish regular schedules. Everyone will have proper shifts to work and proper time to rest. We have time now. We are not desperate anymore." Choi Min-jun smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was a real smile. "We did it," he said. "I cannot believe we actually did it." Park Sun-jae laughed. The first true laugh anyone had heard from him in days. "My grandmother would be proud," he said. "She always said humans are more strong than they think." As the sun moved across the purple sky, the camp transformed. It was still a small settlement on an alien world, surrounded by strange plants and unusual landscapes. But it was no longer a place of desperate survival. It was a place where extraordinary people had done an extraordinary thing. The real work would continue. The biofuel production would need to be managed and monitored. But the crisis was over. Humanity had found a way to survive on a world that was not Earth, and they had done it not with advanced technology or perfect equipment, but with intelligence, cooperation, and the refusal to give up. The supply ship would arrive in 3 weeks. When it did, the team would have a story to tell. A story about how humans could adapt to anything. How humans could use what the world offered them and make it into something that would keep them alive. How a small group of determined people could face the impossible and win. But that story could wait. For now, they had light. They had power. They had time. And they had each other. The crisis had passed, but Park Jin-ho could not stop thinking about possibilities. He stood in the camp's control room looking at the biofuel stored in the metal containers. The fuel had solved one problem, but it had created another kind of thinking in his mind. A thinking about what else this fuel could do. Lee Tae-oh was in the equipment area when Park Jin-ho found him. The engineer was already working on making the distillation system even more efficient, always improving, always making things better. "I want to try something," Park Jin-ho said without greeting first. "I want to test if the biofuel can be used for cooking." Lee Teo stopped what he was doing and looked at him. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he made a small sound, almost like a laugh. "Cooking?" Lee Teo said. "Sir, we made this fuel for the generator, for power. Cooking fuel and engine fuel are different things." "Are they?" Park Jin-ho asked. "Think about it. What is fuel? It is something that burns and creates heat. The generator needs heat to create power. A cooking stove needs heat to cook food. They both need the same thing." Lee Teo considered this. He was a practical man, but he was also intelligent. He understood what Park Jin-ho was saying. "It is possible," he admitted. "But it is also very dangerous. Engine fuel can burn too hot. It can cause fires. Cooking is something different from powering a machine." "Then we test it," Park Jin-ho said. "We test it carefully with safety systems. We do not rush. We make sure everything is absolutely safe before we try to use it." They brought the question to Kim Hai-wan. She looked at the chemical composition of the biofuel on Kang Yun-soo's computer screen. She studied the data carefully, making notes and comparing it to information about cooking fuels from Earth. "The biofuel is similar to rapeseed oil," she said finally. "It has a high smoke point and stable burning. That is good. But it also has some compounds that are not in normal cooking oil. I would need to do more testing to know if these compounds are safe for food." "How much testing?" Park Jin-ho asked. "Several days," Kim Hae-won said. "Maybe a week to be absolutely certain." Park Jin-ho looked around at the team. Everyone was watching him, wondering what he was planning. For the first time since the power crisis, he could see that people were thinking about something beyond just survival. They were thinking about living better, not just living. "Do the testing," he said to Kim Hae-won. "Find out everything you can about this fuel. Can it be used safely for cooking? What are the risks? What are the benefits?" While Kim Hae-won worked on the chemical analysis, Park Jin-ho and Lee Teo began planning. They designed a small, controlled cooking system. Lee Teo created a simple burner using metal salvaged from the camp. It was basic, but it was built with careful attention to safety. There was a fuel container separate from the heat source. There were valves to control the heat. There was a metal shield to protect against accidental fire. After 5 days of testing, Kim Hae-won came to Park Jin-ho with results. "The fuel is safe for cooking," she said. "It burns cleanly. The heat is controllable. The only concern is that it is slightly different from earth cooking oils, so it may affect the taste of food in small ways. But it is not dangerous. It will not release toxic chemicals." Park Sun-jae, listening to this from where he sat in the corner, asked a practical question. "Why would we cook with engine fuel? We have normal food supplies." "Because," Park Jin-ho said, "we have not had hot food cooked properly in weeks. We have been eating cold rations and rehydrated meals. I want the team to have a proper meal. I want people to taste something good. I want them to remember what it feels like to be human, not just to survive, but to enjoy something. Food brings people together. A proper meal brings comfort and hope." Everyone became quiet. Park Sun-jae nodded slowly. Even Lee Tae-oh, the practical engineer, seemed to understand. "But sir," Choi Min-jun said carefully, "there is risk. If something goes wrong with the fuel, if it burns too hot or causes a fire, then we have safety measures," Lee Tae-oh said firmly. He was standing beside the small cooking burner he had built. "This is well designed. I will supervise the entire cooking process. There will be no accident." Park Jin-ho looked at Lee Tae-oh with appreciation. The engineer had moved from doubt to confidence in the idea. Now he was protective of it, wanting to make sure it would work perfectly. "I want Yoon Mi-kyung to prepare the meal," Park Jin-ho said. "She has the skills to do this." Yoon Mi-kyung was a microbiologist, but she had another skill that few people knew about. When she was younger, she had trained as a chef before becoming a scientist. She had studied cooking in Seoul before going to university. She loved food and understood how to make it taste good. When Park Jin-ho asked her to prepare a meal using the biofuel as the heat source, her eyes lit up in a way that no one had seen before. "Really?" she asked. "You want me to cook a real meal?" "The best meal you can make," Park Jin-ho said. Yoon Mi-kyung spent a day planning. She studied what food was available in the camp's storage. They had some dried vegetables, some preserved proteins, some grains. She also knew that Kim Hai-won had identified several local plants that were safe to eat. The native root vegetables, the edible seed pods, the leaves of certain plants. In Yoon Mi-kyung's mind, these things were already becoming a meal. She worked with Kim Hai-won, selecting the best native plants that would work with earth food. She planned a meal that would combine familiar tastes with new flavors. It was going to be something special. Lee Tae-oh prepared the cooking system on the evening before the planned meal. He tested it multiple times with careful heat, making sure the temperature could be controlled precisely. He added extra safety features, including a fire suppression system made from water containers positioned nearby. When everything was ready, Lee Tae-oh filled the fuel tank with the biofuel. He lit the burner carefully. The fuel caught fire with a clear, steady flame. The heat was controllable and clean. There was no smoke, no dangerous flare-up, just a good, practical heat source. "It works," Yoon Mi-kyung said, watching the flame. "I can cook with this." Park Jin-ho stood back and looked at what they had created. A fuel production system that made biofuel from alien plants, a generator system that ran on that fuel to power the camp, and now a cooking system that would prepare them a meal. All of it made from what they had brought with them from Earth, combined with what the alien world offered. It was remarkable, it was impossible, and it was real. That night, the team gathered in the open area outside the camp. Two of Kepler 442b's small moons were rising together, creating double shadows on the ground. The air was cool, but not cold. The purple sky was turning darker as the sun set on the horizon. Yoon Mi-kyung worked at the cooking burner, her hands moving with the confidence and grace of someone who had spent years in a kitchen. The smell that rose from the cooking food was not the usual recycled air of the camp or the cold ration smell that everyone was tired of. It was real food cooking, with real flavors and real aroma. The team members stood around, waiting. Some of them had tears in their eyes, though they did not want to admit it. They were thinking about home. They were thinking about family meals. They were thinking about how far from Earth they really were, and how this moment, cooking food over fire made from alien plants, was bringing them back to something human and real. 20 minutes, Yoon Mi-kyung said, tasting something from one of the cooking pots and nodding with satisfaction. "The food will be ready in 20 minutes. Park Jin-ho watched his team. These people had faced an impossible situation. They had worked without sleep, without comfort, driven only by the need to survive. They had taken plant material from an alien world and transformed it into fuel. And now, that same fuel was cooking them a meal. He thought about how humans had always done things like this. Through all of history, in every difficult time and place, humans had found ways to not just survive, but to live, to create beauty, to eat together, to share meals and stories and moments of joy. Lee Tae-oh stood beside him, also watching Yoon Mi-kyung work. "This is good, sir," Lee Tae-oh said. "This is very good. We did not just solve the power problem. We have shown that we can live here. We can build a life here." Park Jin-ho nodded. That was exactly what he had been thinking. And soon, everyone would eat the meal that Yoon Mi-kyung was preparing. They would taste food cooked with biofuel made from alien plants. And in that moment, they would be truly home, wherever home was. The evening came when the meal was finally ready. The sky had turned from light purple to dark blue to almost black, and the stars were appearing one by one. On Kepler 442b, the stars were different from Earth stars, and there were so many more of them. The sky looked like someone had spilled diamonds across dark cloth. Yoon Mi-kyung stepped back from the cooking burner. The biofuel flame had burned steadily all evening, cooking the meal slowly and carefully. The food was ready. "Come," she said to the team, her voice filled with pride. "The food is ready." Everyone gathered around the cooking area. Park Jin-ho had arranged for simple plates and utensils to be brought from the camp's kitchen. Lee Tae-oh had constructed a small eating table from leftover materials, strong and steady. Kang Yun-soo had arranged chairs in a circle so that everyone could sit together and see each other's faces. Yoon Mi-kyung began to serve the meal. She had created something beautiful and surprising. The main dish was protein from Earth combined with native root vegetables that had a mild, slightly sweet flavor. The cooking had made the colors wonderful: the white and brown of the Earth proteins, the orange and deep yellow of the native vegetables. There was also a grain dish with seeds from local plants and leafy greens that she had collected and cooked with careful heat. When she placed the first plate in front of Park Jin-ho, he looked at it without speaking for a moment. It was just food. It was not fancy or complicated, but it was real food, cooked with care and skill, made from impossible sources, prepared with hope. He took the first bite. The taste was familiar but different. The flavors of Earth and the flavors of Kepler 442b mixing together on his tongue. It was warm. It was good. It was absolutely real. Park Jin-ho closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, there was moisture at the corners. He did not try to hide it. "It is perfect," he said to Yoon Mi-kyung. She served everyone else, plate by plate. When each person had food, they all sat down together. For a moment, no one spoke. They were just tasting their meal, experiencing the warmth and the flavor and the reality of what had been impossible. Park Sun-jae took a bite and immediately looked surprised. "This is really good," he said. "I mean really good. I thought it would taste strange, but it is delicious." "The native vegetables have a natural sweetness," Yoon Mi-kyung said, sitting down with her own plate finally. "Once I understood that, I could cook with them instead of against them. They work together with Earth food very well." Han Ji-woo was eating carefully, tasting each element of the meal separately and together. Her researcher's mind was analyzing the flavors even as she enjoyed them. "This is remarkable," she said. "Do you know what we are eating? We are eating food from two worlds, literally two different worlds combined into one meal." Kang Yun-soo, who was youngest of the team, had tears running down her face as she ate. No one asked why. Everyone understood. They all had felt the weight of the crisis, the fear of the impossible, the pressure of the desperate work. Now they were sitting under alien stars, eating a meal cooked with fuel made from alien plants. And they were alive. Lee Tae-oh tasted the food and immediately looked at the cooking burner. "The heat control is perfect," he said to Yoon Mi-kyung. "The food is cooked exactly right, not burned, not raw. This is perfect cooking temperature management." "That is because you built a perfect cooking system," Yoon Mi-kyung said. They exchanged a look that suggested they both understood something important about cooperation and skill and making impossible things work. Choi Min-jun, the engineer who had doubted at the beginning, was quiet as he ate. When he finally spoke, he said simply, "I am sorry I did not believe at first. I was wrong about what humans could do." Park Jin-ho looked at him. "You were not wrong," he said. "You were afraid. That is different. Fear is natural. But we showed each other that fear does not have to stop us. We can be afraid and still do the impossible things." Kim Hae-won, the botanist who had started all of this by suggesting that plants could be used for fuel, raised a cup of water. "I want to say something," she said. Everyone stopped eating and looked at her. "When Commander Park asked me if plants could be turned into fuel, I did not know the answer. But I wanted to know. And that wanting to know, combined with the need to survive, created this moment. We did not do this because it was easy. We did this because we had to." But in doing what we had to do, we discovered something new. We discovered a way to live on a world that we did not make. We discovered that humans can adapt to anything. They drank to that, raising their cups of water in the way that humans had raised cups for thousands of years. In that moment, they were not just a research team on an alien planet. They were humans, continuing an ancient tradition of gathering together after difficult work and sharing food and celebrating that they had survived. Park Jin-ho looked around the circle at each person. Han Ji-woo, careful and precise, who had recorded every step of their work. Kang Yun-soo, young and smart, who had kept the computer systems running and organized the data. Lee Tae-oh, the engineer who built impossible things from simple materials. Kim Hae-won, the botanist who saw possibility in the unknown world around them. Yoon Mi-kyung, who had turned plant and protein into something that made them feel human. Park Sun-jae, the medic who kept them healthy and sane. Choi Min-jun, who had moved from doubt to belief and then to strength. These were his people. These were humans at their best. Not perfect, not without fear, not without moments of doubt, but willing to try, willing to work together, willing to face the impossible and actually accomplish it. The meal lasted a long time. They talked about their families on Earth. They talked about the strange beauty of Kepler 442b. They talked about the work they had done and how each person had contributed something necessary and important. Yoon Mi-kyung told stories about learning to cook in Seoul, about her grandmother's kitchen and the flavors she had learned there. Lee Tae-oh talked about learning engineering from his father, who had been a builder in Busan. Kim Hae-won shared memories of studying plants as a child, wanting to understand how the natural world worked. The biofuel flame burned steadily, providing warmth and light. It had started as an emergency solution, a desperate attempt to survive. But now it was something more. It was proof that humans could take what an alien world offered and make it their own. It was proof that they belonged here, not as conquerors, but as adapters, as problem solvers, as creatures who could learn and change. When the meal was finished, everyone helped clear the plates. They worked together as they had worked together on the biofuel production. No one needed to be asked. Everyone understood that they were part of something bigger than themselves. As the night deepened on Kepler 442b, the temperature dropped slightly. Park Jin-ho and Lee Tae-oh sat by the biofuel burner, watching the flame. "What happens now?" Lee Tae-oh asked. "Now?" Park Jin-ho said. "Now we send a report to Earth. We tell them what we have discovered. We tell them about the biofuel and the cooking and everything we have learned. And then, when the supply ship arrives in 2 weeks, we have a story to tell." "And after that?" Lee Tae-oh asked. Park Jin-ho looked out at the alien landscape, at the plants that had saved their lives, at the sky full of unknown stars. "After that," he said slowly, "we continue. We improve the biofuel production. We learn more about this world. We make it home. Not Earth home, but real home. A place where we live and work and eat together. A place where humans are no longer visitors, but inhabitants." Lee Tae-oh nodded. That sounded right to him. That sounded like a future worth having. Inside the camp, in the communication room, Park Jin-ho prepared a message to send to Earth. He wrote about the power crisis. He wrote about the team's work to create biofuel from alien plants. He wrote about the breakthrough and the tests and the successful production. He wrote about cooking a meal with biofuel and about what that meant to them. He wrote, "We came to this planet as visitors, hoping to study it and survive on it. We have done both. But more importantly, we have proven that humans can do more than just survive. We can adapt. We can create. We can find hope in desperate situations. The biofuel we have created is not just fuel. It is proof that the future of humanity among the stars is not dependent on bringing everything from Earth. It is dependent on our ability to understand and work with the worlds we find. We are ready for whatever comes next." He sent the message toward Earth, knowing it would take weeks to arrive. But when it did, people would read his words and understand that humanity had changed something important on this alien world. Not just the power systems, but the very idea of what humans could accomplish. The two moons of Kepler 442b continued their journey across the night sky. The alien plants grew and lived in the darkness, not knowing that they had given humans life. The stars shone down on a small camp where 12 humans had done an impossible thing together. And in that camp, as the night deepened, people slept more peacefully than they had in weeks. They slept knowing that they would survive. They slept knowing that they were part of something extraordinary. They slept as inhabitants of a new world, having proven that humans belonged anywhere they chose to be.